Hey everybody, it's Lisa with a couple of pickers. I just thought I'd put a question out there and ask everybody, do you think this picking gene that we all seem to have to resell is it genetic? Is it something that you're born with? I'm just curious, how many people, how many of us come from families? I know my mom and dad, didn't pick and resell. I mean, my mom collected bottles, which is how I got my big love for glass. I remember as a small child going with her and digging for bottles. But that wasn't to resell, that was for her collection. And my dad, while he was an extremely hardworking man, I mean, my mom never had to work outside the home a day in her life. He provided for us very well. He never bought and sold things, to make money. He worked one job. I mean, he's worked two jobs when I was real young, but, as I got older, he only had to work one job. Plus, he was retired military, so, that helped too. He did 20 years in the Navy. But talking to my parents and finding out more information about my grandparents was very enlightening. My grandfather, on my mom's side, he was born and raised here in Florida, and he did drive a school bus for a few years. He did do that, but how he normally, mainly supported his family was he gardened, he grew, vegetables and fruits and sold them. He fished, and he chopped wood. Now, my mom will tell you that, they chopped wood as children. That was part of what they did too. And he raised animals. They raised their own animals that they ate. They raised pigs and chickens and cows, and that's how they survived. So I think he was a really savvy, self-starting businessman. He he sold fish, he sold wood, he sold fruits and vegetables. I think that's a pretty savvy thing to do, and so I like to think that maybe that's part of why I like to do what I do. And then my grandfather on my dad's side, again, growing up, we never really talked about reselling and things like that, because it's not anything my dad did. So it wasn't really something that came up in conversation. But in talking to my dad, I learned that that was one of the best things that my grandparents loved to do, was go to auctions. And of course, they lived in Colorado. They did a lot of farm auctions. And both of my parents grew up on farms, different types of farms, but they both grew up on farms. And he would buy and sell farm animals. Said he loved nothing better than to go to the auction in some of the small towns where you could get the cattle pretty cheap, and then take them home, and then just within no time take them to the big city auctions and flip them and make sometimes up to twice as money. And then to find out that my granddad even had a sense of humor with it, that Dad said one of his favorite things to do was, especially people he didn't like, was he loved to bid up the auctions. And I said, well, I've seen that happen on eBay, where back when people would shill bid, and I said, well, what happens if you end up, and he ended up getting stuck with one. He said, oh, that happened every once in a while, but he said it was worth it for all the other times that he was able to stick it to somebody else. So God bless you, Granddad, for having a sense of humor and sticking it to the man, making them pay more for their cow than they should have. So, but I just thought that was interesting to learn that my grandparents on both sides were very auction oriented, and loved to sell their wares. Also, my granddad on my dad's side, they actually raised rabbits, and they would butcher the rabbits, and their local grocery store would let them sell their rabbits in the grocery store. So, back way before everything had to be, FDA approved. But so that's, they made money that way. They made money because my granddad built homes. That was his main occupation. He was a home builder. But his heart, Dad said, was always in auctions and making deals and wheeling and dealing. And so it kind of makes me proud to think that I'm carrying on, part of the family tradition of doing that. So I was just curious to know how many of you came from backgrounds where your parents or somebody in your family did the kind of things that we do, not necessarily online, because online didn't exist back then, but through word of mouth, through towns. What did they do? Were they hustlers? Were they 9-to-5ers? Or how did you become interested in doing what you do? I know with me, I just kind of fell into it as a need to supplement my income back when eBay first started. It was a way to make a little extra money, and the internet was just coming around, and back then I got cash in the envelopes in the mail. I got money orders, personal checks, stood in line at the post office with 25 to 50 packages or however many I had going out. Had to have them post each one individually. All the fun times. Dial-up, had to deal with dial-up and scan items, and back when digital cameras were first coming out, and it was definitely a challenge compared to how it is now. But I started out for that, and then honestly just fell in love with it. Fell in love with the thrill of the hunt, with finding things that you had only heard about, or finding things you knew nothing about, and then being able to research them. Again, with the internet these days, it's so much easier because we're able to go on there and find out pretty much anything about anything we find, or at least be open to a source to be able to get to someone that can tell us what we've got. But I was just curious, how did you come about your love for it? Was it always there? Were you always a junker, thrifter? Like I said, growing up, I can't even think about, we had 5 and dime stores, but I don't remember going to thrift stores when I was growing up. I don't remember going to any type of auction or anything like that, even though I'm sure we had them in our areas, but it was just not something that my parents participated in. But then, like I said, to sit down and really start finding out about your family, and finding out that both of their parents, my grandparents, were into that kind of stuff, was, it was kind of good. Kind of gave me a validation about, like, well, maybe that's where that crazy gene comes from. Because I have 2 sisters, and neither one of them do what I do. One of them tried at one point, but just didn't work out for her, wasn't her thing. And the other one has absolutely no desire to do anything like I do. So I'm just curious, is it a family thing with you guys out there? Or is it something that you stumbled up on and found out that you have a love for? Where did your love of junking and thrifting and things come from? I guess that's what I'm asking. Let me know. If you like this video, make sure you click the like button. Subscribe to my channel. I'm really excited about starting this YouTube channel and continuing to grow it. And I look forward to having lots of conversations and learning things about you, and sharing some things about Rob and I, and about us as a couple of pickers. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.